Ali, the Prophet's cousin, once said, "Even if you're born Muslim, you still need to discover Islam." Let's all walk on this journey together with New Muslims Hub.
واستعينوا بالصبر والصلاة وإنها لكبيرة إلا على الخاشعين الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو ربهم وأنهم إليه راجعون.
And seek help through patience and prayer. And it is indeed a great burden except for the reverent, who are certain that they shall meet their Lord and that to him they will return.
Today, inshallah, we're going to be talking about the ethics of Salah, the daily 5 prayers. Last time we talked about the ethics of fasting, part of Ghazali's book, The Beginning of Guidance. He has very beautiful insights to share with us. He was such a great scholar. The book is divided into acts of worship and sins, and then the ethics of accompanying people. So in the beginning of the acts of worship, he talks about the hadith where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that Allah says, "My servant does not draw near to me with anything more beloved to me than the religious duties that I have obligated upon him. And my servant continues to draw near to me with nawafil," which is the voluntary, the sunnah, extra, "until I love him. When I love him, I become his hearing with which he hears, and his sight with which he sees, and his hand with which he strikes, and his foot with which he walks. Were he to ask something of me, I would surely give it to him, and were he to seek refuge with me, I would surely grant him refuge." So Imam Ghazali mentioned this hadith and gave this beautiful formula in the beginning that the obligatory acts of worship that we do are our capital, and the voluntary acts of worship that we do are like the profits that we gain. The obligatory, the fara'id, are like the capital, and the voluntary, the nawafil, are like profit. And this was really a beautiful metaphor that he used. And then he talked about how to best make use of all the voluntary actions to gain more rewards and more profit. And then let me take this quote from him: "And you will never be able to do so," meaning the best, reaching the ultimate, "unless you divide your time and organize your daily set acts of worship from your morning until your evening." Your daily set acts of worship is what is called the awrad, whether it's dua from supplication, whether it's dhikr, remembrance of Allah, whether it's Quran. So let's say every day I will read 3 ayahs of the Quran and contemplate upon them. I will read 1 page, I will read so and so. Like the Prophet said, the best acts of worship are the most continuous, even if they are few. So even if you commit yourself to 1 ayah per day, but stick to it. This is the concept of wird, sticking yourself to a daily set acts of worship, from your morning until your evening. Again, dua, we can do this by dua, by dhikr, by Quran, and by contemplation. If we can commit ourselves to doing these on a daily basis, it would be very, very beneficial to us on a spiritual level and on our connection to Allah. And one might say, how can we contemplate in city life? Well, you can still find something to contemplate upon. Looking at anything from Allah's creation, from the food that we are cutting, from the vegetables, from the fruits, from anything, just looking at the sky from your window, looking at your own self, looking at your, the people around you. Everything is a sign of Allah's creation. Everything around us is a sign in itself. You will never be able to do this without organizing your time. So this was an introduction before we go into the ethics of prayer. Now, he talks about some ethics that we need to do before Salah. Of course, we know that heading to the mosque, prayer in the mosque, is obligatory for men, optional for women. So he's talking to men, don't leave congregational prayer in the masjid. And then he moves on to the dua of entering the mosque. Allahumma aftah li abwaba rahmatik, oh Allah, open your doors of mercy to me. And then he say, do not sit before you do the greeting of the mosque, praying 2 rakahs. Now this is voluntary, it's not obligatory, but it would be better if we do it whenever we enter a mosque. For voluntary actions, for the nawafil, we can double or triple the intentions. Let's say I want to pray the prior sunnah of the dhuhr, for example, and I enter the mosque, and it's already time for dhuhr, so I can pray 2 rakahs for both, the greeting of the mosque and in the same time for the sunnah, the prior sunnah of Salat al-Dhuhr. And then he says, if you still have time until the adhan, now he's talking about those who would go before even the adhan is heard. Make sure you keep making dua to Allah, supplicate to Allah. And when the adhan is here, then stop your dua and start doing the repetition after the adhan. Now we know that we repeat when the adhan says Allahu Akbar, we say the same. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, we say the same. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, we say the same. When the mu'adhin says Hayya ala salah or Hayya ala al-falah, we say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, which means indeed there's no might or power except by Allah. And in Fajr prayer, when the mu'adhin says As-salatu khayrun min al-nawm, prayer is better than sleep, we say Sadaqta wa barart, which means you said the truth and you did well, and so on. And then we repeat Allahu Akbar, we say the same. La ilaha illallah, we say the same. And then he mentions a very beautiful note: wait for the adhan. Don't be rushing to the mosque after the adhan is already said. Just you go before it and you wait for the adhan. And some used to say, I'm not going to be waiting for Allah to call upon me. I should be waiting for the adhan, not the other way around, because this is the call of Allah to us to rush to prayer and to rush to success. Now, as females, we can apply these when we go to the mosque, and we can apply the same when it comes to the repetition after the adhan and the dua and so on. Then he moves on and he says that this is what you need to do with every obligatory prayer. Now, if you're willing to do the night voluntary prayers, we know that throughout the whole year it's called Qiyam. Nowadays in Ramadan it's called Taraweeh. It has this special name of Taraweeh. It's the same thing, technically the same thing. It's the same extra night prayers that we do after Isha, but its name in Ramadan is Taraweeh, and Taraweeh comes from the Arabic word Rawaha, which means to relax or relieve, or this feeling of serenity. And this is really the feeling that it gives us in Ramadan. So Imam Ghazali here says, if you're willing to do the night voluntary prayers, make sure you postpone the watr, which is the single rak'ah prayer, to be the last thing. Now, side note, we know that it doesn't have to be the last thing. Let's say now in Ramadan, I pray Isha, I pray some extra night prayers, and then I pray the Sunnah, the Shafa and Watr, and then I sleep, and then I wake up before Fajr, and do extra 2 rak'ahs of Qiyam Layl, of Taraweeh or voluntary night prayers. That's fine, that's okay, as long as it's just 1 watr per night. It's better to keep the watr the last thing before you sleep, on usual days. And he mentions, make sure you don't get busy with unimportant things before you sleep. Like, make sure that this is really the final chapter of your day. This is the watr, and then direct to sleep. And by this, we make our last deed prayer right before we sleep. And we know that the acts of worship are judged by their endings. This is why we always make a dua that Allah grant us a beautiful ending of our life, because this is really what matters the most. Now we go on to the ethics that we should be applying when we start saying Allahu Akbar and when we start the prayer itself. He says something like, when you're done with your purification, all sorts of purification, and you're done with your wudu, your ablution, you have chosen a pure spot to pray in, you have made sure that you're wearing pure clothing, you're covering up your awra. For women, it's the whole body except the face and the hands. For men, it's what's between the navel and the knees. And it's even mustahab, like it's preferable to even cover the body, of course, the rest of their body, especially while prayer. When you make sure that you cover up, you've put your pure clothing, you've chosen a pure spot, and you are directed to the Qibla. He moves on and says, make sure you are standing correctly, upright, seeking refuge from shaitan, refreshing your heart, remembering who you are standing before. Don't supplicate to your Lord with a heedless heart and a chest full of dunya whispers and desires. Remember now that you are standing before Allah, your creator. So make sure you filter your heart from every shackles of this dunya, from every distraction. And this is really beautiful. When we say Allahu Akbar, even the movement that we say when we raise our hands, it's kind of symbolizes that you actually throw whatever is in the dunya, you throw it right before your back, and then Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than anything. And among the early generations, some of the farmers in the early generations, of the Muslims, when the adhan would be heard, and let's say they are farming and he's holding his axe, to dig a hole or something in the land, and he's holding the axe right before his back. If he hears Allahu Akbar, he throw it before his back. To that extent, they were very aware and conscious of Allah, of the meaning of Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater even from this movement that I'm doing. We are on a continuous journey of jihad, and when we look up to these examples, we try to approach them. But in the same sense, we need to be easy, and we need to be taking it like slow but steady. Like we said, keep them minimal, but stick to it. This is what we really need to understand. But these are beautiful reminders that we need to keep in mind, to always refresh our mind before we start the prayer. Now I'm standing before the Creator, so this is a powerful statement. Don't supplicate to your Lord with a heedless heart and a chest full of dunya whispers and desires. And he mentions the hadith that says that Allah accepts from your prayer as much as your humility, submission, and consciousness. We know that. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, a person may offer a prayer and nothing of it is recorded for him except the 10th of it, 1/9 of it, 1/8 of it, 1/7 of it, 1/6 of it, 1/5 of it, 1/4, 1/3, or half of it. This is a Hasan hadith, which is not a Sahih, not in the level of Sahih, but it's a Hasan hadith. It's not a weak hadith. And the meaning is supported by other Sahih hadiths. It's very powerful that we might be praying, and then the reward that is recorded for us is only 1/10, is only quarter, is only half. So the real reward is up to what we truly are conscious of, and the humility that we show, the khushu' and the consciousness. Then he moves on to more tips to achieve ihsan in salah. Now, if you guys remember, the meaning of ihsan is going the extra mile to worship Allah as if you see Him. If you cannot see Him, then realize that He sees you. Applying ihsan in salah, he says, worship Him while you pray as if you see Him, and if you cannot see Him, He sees you. Imagine a righteous person. These are his quotes from the book. Imagine a righteous person or a family member watching your prayer. You will realize how slow-paced and heart-conscious your prayer becomes. Now get back to yourself and ask yourself, aren't you shy of your Creator and Master? If you care that much to show that you are, or to make your prayer slow-paced and, easy and very heart-conscious, your heart is very conscious while praying, when a righteous person, let's say your teacher, your Islamic teacher, for example, your sheikh or a family member, you want to show them that what you taught me, I'm doing it, I'm applying it. And this is really a tricky part, because often when we pray congregational prayers, we show more care to the prayer than when we pray on our own. And here it's something that we should be watching our hearts in. And it's a beautiful reminder from Imam Ghazali that he's actually not saying it so that you would keep saying, okay, then I will stop praying congregational prayers, I will only pray on my own. No, this is not the point, because this is, you can ask yourself, am I doing it to... Sometimes when we pray in congregational prayers, we are encouraged by the company to show the best, or to give the best performance in the prayer. So if that's the case, then this is a sincere intention, and that's fine. But if it's just to impress, and here's the tricky part, and here's the dangerous part, because they are around and they are looking, so I'm going to make sure that it looks the best way. Now this is the dangerous part. But here even he's advising this: give yourself this training, this exercise to beautify your prayer. Imagine that a righteous person is watching you. So will you pray, recklessly, or will you pray in the best performance? A family member who taught you how to pray. And then imagine the Prophet watching you. Now watch your performance. Now, this is like a preparation step. Now imagine that Allah is watching you anyways. Regardless of the Prophet, regardless of the family member or whoever is watching, Allah is already watching you in all your prayers. So get back to yourself and ask yourself, aren't you shy of your Creator and Master? So this is a powerful reminder to show Allah the best performance in our prayers. Now, he moves on to give us some tips on even the movements when we do them, and some additional things to do before and during the prayer. One, he says, don't leave iqamah, even if you're alone. Even if you're praying alone, The iqama is a sunnah. Again, it's a sunnah. Allahu Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah. And then it's just like the adhan, but only single utterings with qad qamat as-salah, qad qamat as-salah. It's time for prayer, it's time for prayer. Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. This is how it ends. So when you do the iqama, even if you're praying alone, you're just, putting yourself in the mood that it's time for prayer. It's a good transition from the worldly life to the time of prayer. Look down in all movements, focusing on the point where your forehead is located when you do prostrating. Now, we need to be standing upright, yes. Allah doesn't want us to be looking, hunchbacked and, in this posture. No, stand upright. But your face should be humble and you should be looking on the point where you will be prostrating. Don't look around. Don't you ever look right and left. Not allowed during prayer. Extend your takbir. And this is really a nice point that I never even thought about it. And it's not related to a sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, but this is just his own way of beautifying the prayer. When even the transitions between the movements, let's say I'm standing and then I'm going to do the ruku'. Some people do the ruku' and then say Allahu Akbar, or when they are still standing, they say Allahu Akbar and then they do the ruku'. He says, extend your takbir so that every moment and every movement of your whole prayer is full of dhikr, is full of Allah's remembrance. Don't leave a silent moment. So you would say Allahu Akbar while you are doing the movement from the standing to the ruku', from the ruku' like Sami Allahu liman hamida and so on. Extend your takbir and extend those transitions to make sure that it's 100% full of dhikr. When you prostrate with your, place your knees first, hands, and then your hands, and then the forehead. Your elbow should not touch the ground. And you should make sure you keep your wings wide, and this is only for men. With women, no, it's okay to, just make sure that your elbows don't touch the ground. When standing up, go up with both feet and both legs. Don't go up, stand up like extending one knee up front and then, standing on one feet and then the next. No, go up with both feet and both legs. This is just an amazing daily exercise for body flexibility and for muscles flexibility. And when you do the salutations, only in this, التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات, only in this part, we make the left foot bent underneath, as in this picture. But in the rest, it's normal. And when you finalize the prayer and you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, feel the angels on both of your shoulders. You are saluting them and the Muslims around you if you are in a congregational prayers. Last but not least, he goes on to say about when you are the imam, make sure to keep it light. If you are the imam, the Prophet used to lead the most perfect yet the lightest prayers. Wait for the imam to finish every action first. Don't exceed or equate their speed, except in recitation, it's okay. For example, if the imam is reciting Al-Fatiha, you can recite Al-Fatiha parallel. But when he says Allahu Akbar, don't go and do the step before he does it. Wait for them till they say Allahu Akbar and then they move to ruku', then you do the same. Don't be just parallel, don't synchronize with them, nor exceed them, of course. Wait for them so that they would be a step ahead. When joining a congregational prayer, never stand alone. Enter the line or drag someone to make up a line with you. Because this is really the sense of Islam that we are taught in many other teachings of Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad, when they would go into a valley and then they would start scattering around, the Prophet used to tell them, your scattering is from shaitan, get together. In another hadith, he says, Allah's hand is with the group. This is really the sense that we have. And of course, we are advised to do the congregational prayers because its reward is 27 times than when you pray alone. Final tips that he said, your time is your age and your age is your capital. So every breath is a priceless jewel, is a priceless gem. Don't be a fool who gets happy with extra money, yet losing more of their age. Don't be happy except with extra knowledge or extra good deeds. Only these will accompany you to the grave when your family, money, offspring, and friends leave you alone. So whenever you have extra time, you can be in a state of 4. 1, seek beneficial knowledge, not the pointless curiosity that people rush to and falsely call knowledge. And this was really a powerful statement. How can you tell that it's beneficial knowledge? If it draws you closer to Allah, if it increases your fear to Allah, if it increases your consciousness of Allah. Does this mean that it has to be only Islamic knowledge? No. You can be studying medicine and achieving the same. The more you study medicine, the more you are drawn close to Allah. The more you study any area of it, but just make sure that it's beneficial. It's very important what he said, not the pointless curiosity that people rush to and falsely call knowledge. If you can't do that, if you have extra time and you have free time and you can't do the seeking knowledge, then do the daily acts of worship that he mentioned earlier, the remembrance, the Quran, the contemplation, and so on, which is the awrad that we mentioned before. If you can't do that, then at least benefit other Muslims through acts of charity, acts of helping them out, making them happy, and so on. If you even can't do that, then the fourth stat is make sure everyone is safe from your evil while you seek your daily living. Then move on with your life, but just make sure that everyone is safe from your evil. Any free time, make sure this is the 4 states that you need to be working on. If you can't do number 1, then number 2. If you can't do number 2, then number 3. If you can't do number 1 or 2 or 3, then at least make sure that people are safe from your evil. And he mentioned in another position, know that a slave to his faith is one of 3. He's either safe, doing obligatory acts of worship and avoiding sins, or he's a winner, going beyond to do the voluntary acts of worship, the prophets that he mentioned before, or he's a loser, not fulfilling even the obligatory acts of worship. So make sure you are, if you're not gonna be a winner, make sure that you are at least safe. And then he moves on and says, know that a slave to the rest of slaves, a human to the rest of mankind, is one of 3. He can be like an angel, trying to bless them and trying to help them out and trying to protect them. Or he could be like animals and plants, no benefit yet no harm. They're just around, I'm not really expecting any benefit nor harm from them. Or like snakes and scorpions, no good expected, evil always avoided. So if you can't be like an angel, don't even go from the neutral status of no benefit and no harm to go down to be harmful or evil like snakes and scorpions. These were really beautiful quotes that I could get from this book, and it's a very beautiful book that I recommend reading it. However, because it was written in the early stages of Islamic knowledge, many of the hadiths mentioned are not 100% authenticated, so it's better to check out a copy with footnotes regarding the hadiths mentioned. Apart from that, his own insights and his own analysis and his own beautiful contemplations are really priceless. May Allah help us perform our daily 5 prayers in the best way and help us even go the extra mile by doing ihsan and gaining more profits with the voluntary actions, inshallah.
Thank you for listening to New Muslims Hub. Any benefit you heard was solely from Allah's blessings, and any error was definitely ours. May Allah accept every moment we all spend in our journey to discover Islam.